morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends on where you're joining from, which part of the world. Welcome to the Legal Hackers podcast number 4. My name is Kanan. I am the operational board Legal Hackers member and very excited to be the host for this conversation today. If this is the first time you are joining this conversation or this Legal Hackers podcast, um, a little insight about what the legal hackers movement is. It is a movement led by legal professionals, tech professionals, and those who are enthusiastic about the space of intersection of law and technology to come together to discuss, the future of law and tech and how to change legal processes and make it more user friendly. So this movement has been going on since 2010 in Brooklyn Law School, where Professor Jonathan Eskin, if you were part of the last podcast, you will know he's an amazing professor who has spearheaded this movement. And across many cities globally, we have volunteers, enthusiasts who have been joining us, legal professionals, but even young students who have advanced this movement. As you see on the screen now, we have our next Legal Hackers Summit coming up in Costa Rica, December 5th and 6th. So if you are interested to know more about this movement or to join the community, please feel free to reach out to us at info@legalhackers.com. So this is a little bit of a background of the Legal Hackers movement. One of the things that we realized as the operational board is that we needed to celebrate our legal hackers more openly to the world. Of course, they are movers and shakers in this space, but as the board, we felt that we wanted to create a platform to hear their thoughts, bring them together from different parts of the world, and have an exchange about how they see the future of law and tech moving forward. We are living in an exponentially fast changing times, especially how AI is revolutionizing so many fields, including the field of law. And I believe that legal hackers is a very pivotal role to play in continuing this conversation, which it has started much, years ago. So very excited to welcome two powerhouse women to this fourth edition of this podcast from two different parts of the world. We have Malin from Stockholm, who's the first panelist for the conversation today. Welcome, Malin. We are very excited to have you for this conversation. And the second guest that we have in this podcast is Kelechi Achinonu from Nigeria. Thank you so much, Kelechi, for joining us as well. A little introduction about both of these powerhouse legal hackers, women legal innovators, and then we will hear from them. So very quickly, Malin and Kelechi, there were so many achievements that we saw as part of your profile. So here is just highlighting a few. Malin is the legal tech associate with DLA Piper. She's the organizer of the Stockholm Legal Hackers. She's been a board member of the Legal Design Summit. So many hats that you wear, and also a pioneer in the legal innovation movement in Europe and globally. Kelechi Achinonu is a regional head of Hill Justice Accelerator. She is the Next Generation Fellow of the UN Foundation, advisory board member of the Global Legal Tech Hub, and of course associated with the legal hackers in Lagos, Nigeria. So this is going to be a fantastic conversation. Very briefly, I wanted to just kind of hear from your voice first, Malin, and then Kelechi. If you could say a little bit about why is legal innovation important to you? Why is legal hackers important to you? And if there is anything that I miss in your introduction.
Oh, there was plenty in my introduction. Thank you, Kanan, for having me, and very nice to be on the podcast. Why legal hackers is important to me is a very easy question to answer. I wouldn't have any type of resemblance of a career in legal tech if it wasn't for legal hackers. I've been a proud community member for 6 years and ran the Stockholm chapter here in the Nordics for all of those 6 years, and really legal hackers was a way for me to just learn about legal tech myself. In the beginning, I always organized events around topics that I wanted to learn more about, and then other people wanted to know about those topics as well, and that's sort of the road we are on. at the moment. So I think, yeah, the community part of legal hackers, is why it is important, and so important for me personally.
Amazing, amazing. Kalichi, do you resonate with this sentiment? Do you have anything specific that you felt the need for this community from your perspective?
I would say yes. I agree that the community is the number one thing. I think that I can't remember. I think 5, 6 years ago as well, when I reached out saying we needed this kind of community in Lagos, Nigeria, because we didn't particularly have that. I think that. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yes, we can hear you, Kalichi.
Hi. Okay, all right. Okay. When we needed that community because I mean, like me, a lot of lawyers, professionals, um, we understood based off readings of the internet what legal tech was, but there wasn't like a practical like community that could really help with how to learn, what to do, who to go to, and all of that. So I think legal hackers helped us have build and have that community of like-minded professionals, and it was really interesting to meet with people. And I'll speak to legal innovation. I think that, or I believe it's doing things differently. We've seen how traditional legal methods aren't are always the best. They work, yes, and they've worked for when they have worked, but they aren't always the best. And now that we have um, a wave of technology as a tool, I think it's being open-minded enough to leverage technology and innovation in doing things differently and achieving better results. Thank you.
Yeah, that is so crucial. I also remember that in 2014, I started to hear more about legal hackers. I was very lucky to join one of their events in New York, and I felt like I could relate to so many of the issues, even though it's a different geography and different context. But as law and tech come together, we see the geographical boundaries kind of blur away. Malin, if you were to address the concept of legal innovation from where you are sitting and how you see it, what would be your response?
Well, I think it's, I could echo both of you in that it is about challenging the way we have done law, challenging the way we've identified ourselves in the legal industry. I've always had a very much a um, love and like a preference for the tech side of everything, but it's worth remembering that hacking is not necessarily the tech part of it. You can do a lot of change, and you can drive a lot of change, and you can do a lot of legal innovation without any tech whatsoever, just by doing processes, just by talking to people, just by asking people questions, which you don't need any tools or any AI for that matter to do.
Exactly. And if I were to just ask you a follow-up question on that, and why do you think this is so important for the legal professionals?
Oh, because we are very much fundamentally behind on a lot of sectors in terms of changing, of questioning why we do things a certain way, and we have to keep up with the rest of the world. We owe it to ourselves as modern professionals, but also if you work in private practice or you work in a public domain where you have a client, we also owe it to them to give them the best available service, not just the same available service as we have for a long time.
Yeah, that is very true. Kalechi, one of the things that I've found it very difficult to understand as to why the law and legal professions are not super open to technology or to innovation. What has been your experience, and how have you tried to change from your work?
I would say that as lawyers, and no shade to lawyers, actually, I think we pride ourselves in being patient. And what I mean is, there is that law is this, you have to stick with it. My dad was this. I wore this wig and gown in court, and you have to. So I think that sometimes it feels good to be able to hold on to certain rules and regulations that have stood the test of time. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it's also good that we are open-minded and flexible enough to know exactly where things are going and how to make our lives or our things more efficient. And I think that's been the problem. In my case, I'll speak from Nigeria. It's been a case of the narrative has been that technology, innovation, AI is coming to take your job. And so we've seen situations where solutions or platforms that help people access legal services faster have been seen as have been banned or have gotten criticisms because it feels like they're taking the place of people actually walking to chambers or to law firms and actually talking to lawyers and all of that, right? So I think it's been that narrative that we're taking your jobs or they're taking your jobs and all of that. Gradually, I know that I see a change in mindsets where, I mean, now have the age of AI, of with the use of chat GPT, with other tools and resources that have come up. It's not as fast as it should be from my part, in my part of the world, but I see that where we were a decade ago and where we are now, there has been some progress. I just hope that it's faster and better than what it is right now. Yeah.
I completely resonate with this, Kalechi, that it's not as fast. I would like to see it also galvanized, because as Malin said, we owe it to the clients, we owe it to the people that we adapt to these changes. Malin, the fact is that we see a lot of, as Kalechi mentioned, AI is now kind of finally, we hope, changing this narrative, and
Yeah.
lawyers are kind of looking up to, okay, now what can we do with AI? We
Yeah.
have legal AI startups coming in. How do you see this? Do you think this is the movement, or do you think it's still going to take a little longer than what we imagine?
No, I think the difference between the last AI sort of wave we had in the legal industry with a lot of machine learning tools and the generative wave that we have now is that the generative wave is so much more democratized. A lot of people have access to it. It's moving benchmarks. It's moving expectations of the wider public of how AI can be used. When we had when we could only use machine learning, that was pretty inaccessible to a lot of people, even to a lot of smaller law firms. Like if you could only use these tools if you had a lot of money to spend on them, or a lot of resources to spend on them to utilize it, which is why a lot of people didn't. But more importantly, the public didn't, and our clients didn't. Now all of us can use publicly available generative AI systems and tend to use them every single day. And then the question is, why wouldn't my lawyer be able to use this? Why isn't my law firm, why isn't my legal department using these tools? Because I can use them for my job. What is hindering them to use them in there? So I think that is the crucial difference to where we were a few years ago, and why this time it's gonna be, I think, a lot quicker than we think, and it's gonna be a lot more brutal on people who are resisting this change, actively resisting, not just being passively waiting for it, but actively saying, no, I will not use, or I will not learn. I think that's gonna hit hard sooner than at least they think it's gonna hit hard.
Yeah, and you are right. There are people who are resisting it, and they are saying, maybe this wave will also pass and we'll go back to how it was. And but it's very true that these tools are now available for free to anyone with internet, and therefore it is very reasonable that clients and people at large will ask questions as to why the access to justice gap is still there, or why things take so long when I can do it so much more easily. What are some of the use cases, Malin, as a follow-up question, and then I'll come to Kalechi? Where do you see good use cases for legal professionals to use the AI tools?
Right now it's all about your individual efficiency gains. That's where we see the widest array of use cases is in your individual flow of workflow, basically. Now personally, I'm hoping that will scale up to how we work as a team, and how we work as a firm, and how we work with our client. But for now, the most common use cases are anything that you can do with working with text, whether that is small amounts of text in emails and stuff, or whether there is massive amounts of text when you're doing more memo research type of things. Those are the most common use cases, at least for our lawyers, but also when we've met and discussed at conferences during the past 12 months. People use it a lot to just work with text, especially for us who don't speak and write English as our first language, it's a very convenient tool to get that nuance right, and to like make sure our British and American colleagues don't really butcher our text when we send it over.
Yeah, it has really kind of sped up the efficiency so much, especially for the text area. Kalechi, is that your experience too? And where do you see the use cases coming for AI?
Yes, that's also my experience. The use of text, I'd say heavy text, for us. So pretty much understanding a particular kind of clause. Of course, it's been advised and it's not end that as lawyers you don't use, for instance, ChatGPT to draft. You definitely use it to help aid whatever you're looking to draft, but not particularly just referring or referencing it. But I would say pretty much more around drafting, trying to understand what a clause says in that sense if you really do not understand, or getting more context. Yeah, that's been like the case for AI. I would say that in our case, speaking on the entrepreneurship side of things, it will be also trying to leverage building chatbots from there. So we had situations where for people in remote areas who are not particularly able to on demand access legal services, it's a situation where we have a chatbot set up, that is AI based, and they are able to chat, get answers, ask questions, get answers, get help as soon as possible before they are able to have like a human come meet them. So there is also that use case as well.
Yeah, that is
Yeah, no, for
amazing.
sure. I think
Please,
it's
please,
worth
Malin.
remembering that my perspective is very much the law firm one, whereas there is this avalanche of more public sector or more consumer facing law that you can do way more efficiently as well. And but I think there we haven't had a similar adaptation problem at all, because we have just tech has just filled a gap in a market where traditionally, you know, if you didn't have access to that chatbot, or you didn't have access to a lawyer, a human lawyer, you just didn't get your case sorted. You just ignored it, or you didn't do your will, or you just didn't utilize your rights, so to say. But then when we get technology tools to help with that, the utilization rate goes up, and that is really just, yeah, as I mentioned, filling that gap in that market.
Very interesting. So you think that the public sector uptake is more seamless than the private lawyers? Is that the understanding, or
I think the consumer facing products have a bigger uptake, which is the general public, not the public sector. I should have been
very
more specific there, because the public sector obviously has a lot more things that they have to consider before they can truly integrate AI systems into their workflows as well. With that being said, I think a lot of them are itching to make use of AI systems fundamentally that can help them review text and applications and stuff like that. But as we all know, that is a bit of a sensitive area where they have to approach with caution, with mindful caution, as to not cause massive havoc, which has happened historically also when public sector utilizes autonomous systems a bit too quickly.
I have so many questions on so many tangents open up from here. But since we are in the public sector, let's just stay with that, because as you mentioned, Malin, that there is the risk also of kind of going too fast with adaptation of this technology, because we have to be mindful of the consequences. Kalechi, how do you see this? And do you think the risks and the benefits out I don't know, the risks are not as much, or do you think they're significant to not outweigh the benefits as yet?
I think that if we were to do a comparison on that, it depends on how you look at it. But I believe that technology is like a raw material that, in the hands of the good or the not so good people, it can be a tool used for good or not good, right? But I believe that looking at where we started from to what's possible and where we are right now, I would say that the benefits outweigh the risk. I mean, there are risks and they can be crazy, but we shouldn't let the fact that something can go wrong, take away the potential of what we can do and how much we can help people and how people can access justice and legal services, and make their lives better by trying to just, pull ourselves back with whatever the risk could be. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. And I think this is a very important conversation exactly in the space of intersection of law and technology, right? That you need the regulation also to address these risks that emerge from the adaptation of technology. And here in Europe, we see quite a lot of proactive legislation. EU AI Act is also here. Um, how do you see the role of regulation for AI? Because that is where also the public sector plays a role in kind of making sure that the right adaptation of this technology occurs. And where do you see in college, Kelechi, in your experience, have you seen movement towards that in Nigeria? And then I'll come to Malin.
Oh yes, definitely. I think that with respect to the risk, that is where regulation comes in. Of course, we do know what a situation where, because there are risk, we now have regulations that now stifle innovation. Right? It would be great if the regulators, the innovators, and the lawyers, the policymakers actually co-design this regulation so that we can see, so we know that it's beneficial. It's a win-win for everyone, protecting the people, but at the same time giving room for innovation. Now in Nigeria, yes, I've seen how we have that wave of one, consciousness, awareness. And thankfully, we have a lot of information now around AI and then law and tech, and we've seen more lawyers actually more interested in this part of law. But we also see a situation where we don't have so much of regulations, trying to regulate the use of AI. And when it comes to, privacy, the use of people's data, that's where the conversation come in. Are we doing some work? Yes. Can it be better? Yes, as well. But I'm happy that, we're not completely in the dark when it comes to regulation of AI in Nigeria.
Yeah, yeah, and I see that the point of co-designing with bringing different stakeholders is very, very necessary, and that effort is being made to regulate AI in Nigeria as well. Malin, what is your take on the EU AI Act, and how do you think it balances innovation while also creating the right guardrails?
I mean, let's see how the balance unfolds, right? Because we don't know enough yet before we put it into test, before someone gets sued, before things push the boundaries of that balance scale that the European Union has tried to create. I have to say I used to be a very firm believer in that. Even if we have regulation, it's that's not adherently wrong for innovation. You just get another post to handle or to sort of take into consideration when you do your innovation. And sometimes it's easier to innovate when you have these touch points to do. When everything is possible, it's quite difficult to really feel like you're innovative in a sense. But in terms of the EU AI Act, let's see how the balance is gonna get struck. I am like, at least I know that for myself at least, the extreme points in the EU Act, so the prohibited systems versus the getting a legal definition of an AI system, I think those landed quite well. I don't think any of us wants to see a prohibited systems, and I don't think anyone is crying out for those. But then let's see what happens in the general purpose, in the high risk area, and how that pans out in reality. But I do think that it shouldn't stifle, our innovation market in the EU.
That is so well said. On one hand, of course, we need to regulate technology that can have possibilities of creating harmful impact on the society. Yet, we want to make sure that everybody has access to limitless opportunities that the technology can also create for them. But indeed, the act is now kind of going to be implemented in the stages until 2026, and that's when we will see how indeed the effects are going to come. And the technology on the other hand is moving so fast, so that how much the technological progression that has been made by the time yeah, we just have to live to see it. Really interesting developments on that, the innovation part and the futuristic conversation. If we kind of move towards that, where do you see AI impacting the legal profession in the years to come? I mean, how do you see this 5 years down the line or 7 years down the line? Right now, as we just discussed, the text is one of the easy use cases, or document automation could be, or just streamlining the processes within the law firm or the court management system could be enhanced. But how do you see this developing in the years to come? Maybe Kalechi, and then I come to Malin.
All right, sure. I would say that one, I think more use cases. Two, more open-mindedness. We've seen the possibilities of what AI has done with the, I would say, the very few percentage of the of lawyers that are currently adopting it. Now, imagine what it would look like if you had 1,000x of that across the world, right? So I would say more adaptation, more awareness, less fear, more openness to actually leverage that to do more work and efficient work. I think that's like um, my prediction on that. I also think that we would have situations where we have more innovations leveraging legal AI. So now in Nigeria, we have a couple of people here and there, and it's not so exciting. For it's not an excitable solution or things that people want to jump on. But I'm hoping that in 7, 10 years from now, when people talk about how they are legal entrepreneurs or how they are legal techpreneurs, it's something to be proud of and excited about.
Yeah, very interesting. Yes, Malin.
And I, it's very interesting because I keep having like, this is a very common question, and we have sort of always had this 5 years perspective on it, but I think we are going to see a lot more in 1 year than we anticipate, at least on the in speaking from my perspective, from a law firm side. I think already, considering the like anticipated development of these AI models, already in a year's time, I think a lot will look so different. So I think the question we all need to ask ourselves in the legal profession is, okay, well, we can't do that, like, that's a fact. Like the technology is going to evolve in that direction, and then what do we do with that information? Because we either have a option to proactively anticipate it and make sure that we funnel its force, so to say, into good productive products, services, situations for our clients, or is just gonna slam us really hard, and then the technology is just gonna do what the market wants it to do. So it's a little bit around this. The question is around what type of legal industry do we want to create together with AI, and we need to be proactive in that sense, because otherwise, there's going to be a lot of market forces and wheels that are going to question, okay, do we really need confidentiality? Do we really need all of these pillars that sort of uphold the legal industry as a separate industry from others? What do I need my lawyer for? We need to be mindful and curate the fact that you are needed as a lawyer and you're important as a lawyer, and the legal industry serves an important societal function. But we can't do that if we don't adopt the technology, because otherwise it seems like we are not part of the society, the rest of the society that is going to get impacted by these technologies.
Yeah, I love it that you say that it is something that we have to decide what kind of, technology that we want to use as legal professionals and take it forward with us, and what kind of a legal profession we want to create that can be of benefit to everyone. And that is exactly why we need more conversations around this, which are happening now. We see more and more people kind of coming up with conversations around AI ethics and legal AI and the guardrails around it. But indeed, as you said, so much is going to change in the next 1 year with, we see announcements around AGI coming and personalized AI assistant for each human being on the planet in the years to come. So what would it mean for legal professionals is something that we have to be more mindful of, and more open to discussing, and rather than shutting ourselves out.
And I think the important part is there, like you're mentioning the ethics thing. I don't think we can hide behind ethics, confidentiality, and other regulations and rules and not use technology. we have to find a way to utilize AI systems despite these rules and regulations. That goes for the law firms, that goes for the public sector, that goes for legal departments, because otherwise it's very difficult for you to have a say in any type of legal or any type of ethical use cases for AI if all the other people are going to see is that you don't even use it. So I think that's important to remember that while we have to maintain our principles, we have to find a way to do both in order to be part of the conversation, and hopefully, I hope, drive that conversation so that other parts of society agree that it is important to have safe AI systems and not just cheap AI systems.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And we see the amount of funding that is coming into the legal practice use cases for AI. Billions of dollars are being poured for legal tech startups. So if lawyers are actively resisting it, maybe there are other players who might have, that advantage of market adoption. So we have to be also very careful of, who gets to address this gap in the market, because again, law and legislation, lawmaking is a very important societal function. I want to come to the question of legal design now, because at the end of the day, customer centricity or client centricity, and adopting technology with that mindset is critical if we want to make it effective. And as you said, driving this conversation. Kalechi, I will come to you first and then to Malin. But both of you have been also very actively involved in the startup space in the legal tech area, and are connected to so many people. How do you see the application of design thinking at the moment, and where would you see it in the next, coming years?
I would say that yes, we know it as a concept. So it feels good to talk about legal design thinking. It feels like a nice to have, but I don't think that a lot of innovators or startup entrepreneurs, especially in the legal space, are really applying that. Because I mean, when you think about it, the kind of people that you're solving for are people that, one, may not have internet access, at least in our part of the world, and two, even if they do not particularly have a high-end phone to really access the kind of applications that you want. So comparing that to like the different other industries in Nigeria, for instance, so we have legal tech, we have fintechs, we have health tech. So those industries have very much more developed when it comes to the kind of apps that they develop, the kind of solutions they create. But on our end in legal tech, it's more, we're still trying to figure out the basics, right? So you see a high-end techie who is just passionate about access to justice and wants to build something, for instance, speaking from the entrepreneurship side of things, but he's building an app that is on Google Play Store for people that are in a remote village. So you see, there is already that disconnect. And I think this is where legal design thinking comes in, if applied properly, right? And if people are happy to fail fast, right? Because I mean, there is a notion of failure that you don't want to have anything to do with it. But if you're looking to build, if you're looking to apply legal design thinking in that sense, it has to be something that you are open to throw yourself into the deep end and really figure it out. So again, on our side, it's like a nice, it still feels like a nice to have, but not something that people actually painstakingly bring themselves to applying in building solutions, even in thinking of policies or ways to make services, legal services, more efficient.
No, that
Thank you.
is wonderful. I have a follow-up question for you, Kalechi, because I can really resonate with that. Coming from India, where the access to technology is the first problem that you want to solve if you're talking of AI and just technology integration with law. And somehow we need both online and offline, both public and private sectors coming together. So those kind of platforms are so critical when you bring different stakeholders and viewpoints together. What would be some of the good startups ideas in this space for you at the moment, where we are not kind of just starting from one and going to 10, but taking one, two, three, like all the steps towards 10? In a way, you bring people together rather than leave a certain section behind. So do you have any examples or any kind of innovations that really appeal to you?
I mean, I would speak for Hill. So Hill is a company I work
Yes.
for, and then we support justice startups, and I would say in Africa. in West Africa, East Africa, and in the MENA region. And some of the startups that we've supported are people that have actually tried to go to the grassroots. So, for instance, when it comes to having access to legal services, people, for instance, in Nigeria, don't particularly know that you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't get into a particular kind of contract. So imagine a situation, I think it was in South Africa. There's a company called Creative Contracts. What they've done or what they did is to animate contracts, sorry. So tenancy agreements, they made it animated such that even if you cannot read the legalese in a tenancy agreement, you can actually understand with the pictures what it means to enter into this agreement with a particular landlord and what the implication of that is for you. Also, we've seen situations in Nigeria where startups have legal information platform. So what does this mean? What does it mean to cross this particular road? Why should you not actually cross this road? Why should you do this before signing an agreement? Those kind of innovations are things that help people actually get information. I'll give another instance. We had a protest in Nigeria in 2020. We call it NSAS protest. It was a protest by the youth saying that we were tired of brutality from the police. And people had the information being shared, what our requests were being shared in English. Someone did something very interesting. What he did was to translate all our demands from English to indigenous languages in Nigeria. So we have Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, and he was able to share that to people. And what that meant was people that didn't particularly understand English language were able to still understand what our demands were while we were protesting, but in their own language. And it took off the language barrier. Now, going from there to building a platform in maybe Yoruba, which is a language in Nigeria, to having an application where people can actually connect to lawyers, but still in their language. I think that's a build up. Unlike just deciding to build an application, put it on Google Play Store for people to connect to lawyers when they don't even know when they are supposed to actually need lawyers. I hope that answers the question.
That is amazing. I think it was so inspiring that you mentioned these examples, which are actually made with people in mind as to who's going to use it and how they can interact. And as you can appreciate, the legal challenges of different parts of the world are also different, where somewhere you have to start with legal awareness and then access and then kind of making sure that they build their own solutions. So I also wonder that business model could be another question that you have for such a startup, that how do you make this sustainable and how do you make this run for longer time? With technology it's easy, but when you bring offline elements, when you bring different ways in which to bring it to large number of people, you also have to think how long can this go for. So yeah, those are questions that I always have in my mind around scale and around kind of sustainability. Malin, coming to you about legal design, how do you see it? You've been so closely associated with the Legal Design Summit and have exposure to so many movers and shakers in this space. How do you see this really creating solutions that work for legal tech?
I think it's fundamental that the systems and the tools that we design are user-centric, and there is a lot of legal design to be done there. Because I think I think we could, if we spend some time, we could draw some pretty rough parallels between the Nigerian examples that we heard here and what we need to do in terms of process improvement in the legal space in Europe, at least, because it's not about, there's only so much we can do with technology to make stuff more efficient and to quality control things. We're getting to a point where we have to reconsider process from the start, why we even have this and who they're catering for, who our stakeholders are in this process. We can't just make an application that does something from A to B faster. That is only gonna get us so far. Rather, we want to see the combination of why we do a legal process, and can we look at it from a blank sheet approach, where we now have access to, for example, AI systems. If you look at for a traditional due diligence process, for example, I think there's a lot to be. I think AI can do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of making process more efficient. You can do contract reviews faster, you can collaborate better, etc. But at some point, you're going to want to ask, why do we do a due diligence to begin with? What is the purpose of this outcome? Where do we want to go? Who is using the outcome? Who is looking at a due diligence report, for example? Why are they looking at it, and what are they looking for? And if you apply design thinking methods to these, and sorry, if you apply design thinking methods in your process of reimagining your work streams, I think you can get really, really far. And I think legal design and design thinking, or system design, whatever you want to call it, can be a key to unlocking the car, in the analogy where we don't want faster horses, we want a car. And a lot of people have a trouble imagining a car if they've never seen one. But I think through design thinking and mindful process improvement, where you actually know who your user is and what their needs are and their pain points, that can actually help you find, or at least visualize, a car somewhere down the line.
That is so interesting. And, through Legal Design Summit, I've also seen some excellent cases where, you have those cars ready to show to people what it could look like, the before and the after. Are there any specific examples that you think really kind of shifted the needle a little bit there? Because I can imagine to convince legal professionals about legal design is not the easiest task. One has to keep at it.
Yeah, you have to keep at it, that's for sure. And I mean, as a practical tip, I guess, if you work in a law firm or something, I typically avoid talking about legal design as like a name dropping. I don't put legal design in my business proposals or in conversations with stakeholders per se. I am just comfortable enough in the methodology that I know what I'm doing without having to put a label on it or stamp on it, which takes away a little bit of the unfamiliarity that some lawyers have with the concept of design thinking. Also, the word design is not really super commonly used in the legal industry, so that helps them, ironically enough, access the method a little bit better when you take away stuff that sounds like fuss to a lot of lawyers. But actual examples of this, I'm ratting my brain, but I think, and I don't want to name drop anyone, because I'm gonna say it wrong and forget a lot of people. But I think there's a whole community out there attempting to push the needle in very various ways, and I think the pains that people are solving for are so diverse. And sometimes they're difficult to relate to, because that's not your reality, but they can be quite inspiring nonetheless.
And I completely agree that there is an entire community bringing together that conversation, so that more user centricity or client centricity is inbuilt in the legal processes. So indeed, the kind of talking about it as user centric approach or client centric approach, rather than just calling it a legal jargon, always works much better. I know that we are almost towards the end of the conversation. Time has really, really flown. As some of the last questions that I wanted to ask is that we discussed how things are moving so fast, and we discussed about the changes that the legal profession is also going through at the moment. What would be your advice to someone who's just starting out in this space, a young lawyer or young legal innovator trying to come in and say, okay, what should I know to be successful here? Kelechi, what would be your advice to them?
I would say be open to failing. It's not a bad thing. Two is read and connect with, join a community. I think that's the first thing. Join a community of people that are doing something similar. That way you would never be in the wrong, because you always have someone to guide you, and also be open to failing. It's totally fine too.
That is awesome. What are some of the areas where you have found help in terms of communities like legal hackers, or online kind of meeting people of similar mindset as you, are there any spaces where people can go to other than, of course, their law school?
Yes, I mean, I think on LinkedIn, a couple of communities that you can join once you search for them. But yes, legal hackers, of course, that comes number one. And then some communities on LinkedIn as well. And also ask questions. So it's okay to ask questions online. You're looking to connect with this person. You want to have coffee, to have conversations. I think that those are like good starting points for you to actually be able to connect to your tribe and join a community.
Yeah, I think being a community member with like-minded people can really help you in seeing what is out there, can also help in your own personal growth. And personally, I've also benefited immensely from communities such as Legal Hackers, and just reaching out on LinkedIn, as you said, people are more open to have a conversation or just a virtual coffee with you than you think. So indeed, those are really very, very helpful tips, Kalechi. Malin, what would be your take on this?
I mean, the obvious one is to join or create your local legal hackers community for sure. As I mentioned, I don't know where I would be personally without legal hackers whatsoever. Pretty lost, I would say. The other thing I want to say is that when we build communities, and when you join a community, be prepared to also share yourself. Like, I mean, that's how the community works. It's not just, us three here, and we're the experts, and we share things, and we share our eternal wisdom and stuff like that. No, like, this is a very much a conversation that you are welcome to join and question and ask questions about, and be a newbie because. And I think a way to be feel like you are part of a community, especially if it's online, is to make your own contributions, even at an early stage. Just supporting people's work, asking questions about people's work. Uh, People love talking about themselves and their work, and that should not be underestimated. But that is also your way of contributing, of pushing the conversation further, of taking it to the next level, stuff like that. So don't be afraid to contribute wherever you are, and wherever you are finding your space and your community.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Kind of being open to sharing yourselves, joining communities, and kind of always be interested in the other person and where they are coming from, in a truly kind of global mindset. So I think this has been a fantastic conversation, Malin and Kalechi. There is so much of learning in this episode. I hope that you both also enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And as part of the Legal Hackers podcast, we will continue to bring amazing people like yourselves in the months to come. So if anyone who's tuned in and has been listening to us so far, thank you so much for staying with us. If you have any suggestions, if there is any specific topic that you'd like for us to take up, please feel free, and please reach out to any one of us through Legal Hackers. If you want to start your own chapter, we are always here to assist you and take you step by step. We are looking at fundamentally transformative times in the world, also in the legal profession, and we are hoping that these Legal Hackers podcast will also play its small role in shifting the needle a little bit at some point. So thank you very much for joining, and thank you once again, Malin and Kalechi, for this wonderful conversation and for your time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you both. It was great.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.